Okay, so this is going to be a video about unit type, and we're going to look at none, partly inspired by the David McLeod book, Rust in a Month of Lunches. So one of the examples in there got me thinking. So the example is from page 108, and it's basically an introduction to HashMap and btreemap. With HashMap, you can actually substitute it very simply. I've never thought about this, but if we change that to btreemap, basically a btreemap is a sorted hash map. So if we change that as well, the code will still work. The answer was some dandy. If we change it back, some dandy. So you see it's still the same. So you can substitute, you can swap. If you start off with a hash map and you decide you need to have a sorted hash map, then you substitute in or replace with a btreemap. Right. This got me thinking. So one of the things with the sum and the sum and the enum. Try saying that when you've had a drink. The insert. You want to do an insert if you don't have a value. So you check for a value against the key. If there is already a value, then you do nothing. If there's not a value, you want to add a value. So here we're doing print, so it's going to get the value. It's going to return some value, and then we're going to print the value. Here, this is what got me thinking. So this effectively, so with match, you need the arms to return the same type. Let's run this right. So we know it works and it returns some dandy because that's what's going on down here. Because it returned none because we sent it key 2 and we'd only inserted key 1. Let's go back before we really start editing this. I asked ChatGPT, explain what unit type is, what does it mean, and what does it represent in memory? Because you've got unit type, but also you've got none. So the unit type in Rust is denoted by the empty parentheses. It's a type that represents absence of value, similar to void in languages like C or C++. However, unlike void, which sometimes signifies the lack of a return value or an empty return, unit type, the parentheses, in Rust is a true type with only one possible value, denoted as parentheses. So in Rust, every function must return something, even if it's just a unit type. When a function doesn't explicitly return a value, it implicitly returns. So if you just do a line with, say, print followed by semicolon, it's actually returning the unit type. This is particularly useful in contexts where a function is called for its side effects rather than its return value. So yeah, for instance, if you were just doing a print. In memory, the unit type typically doesn't occupy any space. Since it represents the absence of a value, there's no need to allocate memory for it. It's mainly used to indicate that the operation has been successfully performed or to satisfy Rust's requirement that every function must return something. So even if you think it's not returning anything, it's actually returning unit type. And I kind of asked it, how does it differ from none, more specifically? And it's pretty much just a more elaborate answer there. I'm starting to get a second opinion from Google Gemini sometimes. I think on balance, ChatGPT is better, but sometimes you get a more interesting or thought-provoking answer from Google Gemini. Okay, so let's go back to the code. If we change this to 1, the sum, change that to 1, run it. So we get B now because it's printing. So this line here is running. And what's happening down here? Is that running? Yeah, so saying none. So when it does the get key 2, it just returns none. And you think, well, why is it not returning this? The reason is, this is kind of what I've been learning, is I've put the curly braces around this, which actually makes none return the same type as some. So what do I mean by that? Let's get rid of the curly braces and it won't compile. So if we just had that, you see it won't compile, and it says we've got an error while passing the match arm. So if we, and you could say, well, actually, why is it? Is it just because you've got the semicolon on the end there? Is that what's causing it? And it still won't compile because it's returning a different type, incompatible types, expected unit type. So how do we get the unit type? We add the curly braces, and now we've still got an error. Why we've got the error is because we didn't end the line. So it says put a semicolon on, and there we go, and it compiles. So to return the same unit, the same type, if you're just doing a print, that returns a unit type, and to get a unit type on the other arm, so if you want a sum and a none, if you don't want a none, you could do if let sum. That's quite useful because it then means if you use if let sum, it means you don't have to handle the any other conditions, so you don't have to deal with none. Hash maps are okay, but eventually you get to the .entry method, which I'm going to get onto shortly. So I just thought this would be quite a warm up getting into hash maps again. I've used them before, and obviously you come across them in Python with dictionaries and everything. But whilst working on this, it just occurred to me that I never really delved into what a unit type was or is, the difference between a unit type and the type none. So none is a variant of the option type, indicating the absence of a value within an optional container. So none is part of the option enum, and it does take up some memory. Unit type doesn't, and basically unit type is a way of just saying there's nothing here, nothing to see here. So it's the return type of functions that have no meaningful return value. Whereas arguably none is a meaningful return value because it's the opposite of sum. Anyway, that's maybe I've sparked your imagination, and you've got some other comments to put on here. Again, I'm learning Rust, hence the name of the channel. I'm using this book, which is about 600 pages thick, and I'm going through every single page. So bear with me. And I've been learning Rust for almost about a year and a quarter. So some of the things that I first learned, I've actually forgotten. So I'm having to kind of go over them again, and that always happens. And when you go back and look at something that you first learned when you started as a beginner, then you realize you see it with different eyes. So I think it's always good just to go back over the stuff that you first learned, even stuff like borrow and reference and so on, and ownership. I mean, ownership just means you're responsible for getting rid of it, or for doing the drop. Anyway, that's I'm not getting any commission or anything for promoting, or not that I am promoting it, but I'm just saying that's what I'm using for reference, and I think it's a good book. So yeah, there we go. That is how to work with unit type as a return type of a match arm. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon.